So what does it take to cross the border between the US and Canada in your plane? It's a lot simpler than a lot of people think, but there are some specific and concrete steps you need to take to make sure you don't break any rules. Whether you're crossing from the US into Canada or the Canada in the US, I'll lay out the process in this video in 5 simple steps. Stick with me.
Sure. Whiskey Tower, left turn, wind 230 at 5, clear takeoff on way 23.
Left turn out, clear takeoff 23, Charlie Fox 0. Alright, T's and P's are good, manifold pressure, RPM is good, airspeed's well alive. Let's do it, and rotate. With the weather warming up, my wife and I are planning to fly down to Nashville and New Orleans in a couple of weeks. And it's been a while since I flew into the US, so I decided to refresh my memory a little bit about the process, and I thought I'd share that process and just walk you guys through it, because a number of you have reached out to me as I've made my videos going down to the US and the Bahamas to ask about what it takes, and I'll lay out that process here for you. It's pretty simple. There are some specific steps you need to take, some of them well in advance of your flight. I'm not going to cover the basics here, like flight planning, choosing your destination airports, where you want to stop for fuel, that sort of thing. This video is really going to focus on just the process of crossing the border and what that takes. So let's start with the northern direction, heading from the US into Canada. First step is taking care of air traffic control. If you have a US registered plane or any non-Canadian registered plane, NAV Canada is going to send you a bill some months later to pay for the air traffic control services that you use while you're up here. It's a flat fee, and it'll probably be so far after your flight that you've forgotten what the charge is for, and you're going to be wondering why the heck a company called NAV Canada is sending you a bill. Well, that's what that's for. Step 2 is picking where you're going to clear customs. When you're crossing from the US into Canada, the first airport that you land at in Canada has to be a port of entry that has Canada Border Services Agency services. Now, not all of these airports, of course, have an office on site, but they will send out agents if they need to. But the first thing you have to do is make sure you are planning your flight so that your first stop is at one of these CBSA airports. Thank you, Garmin, for telling me that my air autopilot was climbing a bit. Let's get this back stabilized at 5,500 feet before I continue.
And at this point, my GoPro decided to crap out on me, so you're stuck watching me in my office instead. But to continue, I like to use ForeFlight to at least shortlist the airports that might be good options for landing at to clear customs. I'll go into the airport information page, scroll down to the features section, and there's a field called customs available that'll tell you whether or not you can potentially clear customs there, and it'll have a yes in that field. This doesn't necessarily mean that there is a customs office on site, but you may be able to clear customs there because the CBSA or the Canada Border Services Agencies might send an agent out to meet you there. You can always go to the CBSA's website to check whether the airport that you're looking at actually has an office on site and the hours that it's going to be open. I'll put a link to that in the description. Now keep in mind that not every airport that has a yes in that field actually can be used to clear customs if you don't have the CanPass program authorization. So what I like to do is I use ForeFlight to shortlist some airports, and then I use those in the next step that I'll get back to in a second. And if you don't have CanPass, you also have to land at your airport during the hours that the office that's going to be servicing you is open. So if you're planning to fly over the weekend or late in the evening, your options are going to be a bit more limited than if you fly in the middle of the day. Now, if you do have CanPass authorization, any airport that has that yes in that ForeFlight field is fair game. You can land there at any time of day and get cleared over the phone typically. I won't get into the details of CanPass, but I'll put a link to the website in the description if you want to get more information and consider applying for it. Step number 3, calling and filing your eAPIS before you actually fly. The next step is to call Canada Customs, and I'll put the phone number in the description below. You have to call at least 2 hours and no more than 48 hours before you actually fly across the border. It's a little bit different depending on the direction you're flying in, so I'll get into that later. You're going to call the CBSA office, their telephone reporting office, and you're going to give them a bunch of information such as your aircraft type and registration, your ETA, the number of people on board, both passengers and crew, their citizenship, the declaration for each one of them, details on the travel, why they were away or why they're traveling, etc. And then the final piece, of course, is which airport you're going to land at. Now, I said earlier that you're shortlisting the airports so you can use that in this step. What's going to happen is that CBSA may actually tell you to land at a different airport than what your primary option is. And that'll depend on the circumstances and the availability of staff at the time if you don't have that CAN pass authorization. But they will tell you which airport to land at. And once you have that information, you're ready for the second part of this step, which is going online and filing your eAPIS declaration for U.S. Customs and Border Patrol to tell them you're actually going to be departing the country. I'll get more into this step when I talk about flying from Canada into the U.S. It's pretty much the same type of information that you're filing. The fourth step is to file your flight plan and actually fly the flight. You got to be on VFR flight following or on an IFR flight plan when you're flying across the border. But other than that, it's pretty similar to flying any other flight that you file a plan for. And then the fifth and final step, after you land at your destination airport where you're going to clear customs, you taxi over to the ramp, shut down your plane, and you give Canada Customs a call on the same phone number as you used before. If there's an office on site, they may send an agent out. Even if there's not an office on site, they may send an agent out. But I find more often than not, they will just clear you over the phone, and then you are good to go. And before I talk about the reverse process, flying from Canada into the US, I just want to take a moment and ask for your support. If you're enjoying this video or if you're finding it useful, hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. It really helps me figure out what videos you guys are enjoying and which ones you want to see. And it also helps more people find my videos. Thanks very much, I appreciate it. So flying in the reverse direction from Canada into the US, it's pretty much the same 5 steps you're going to follow, but the details are a little bit different. So with that first step, paying for ATC, you actually have to do this a little bit in advance. You got to go online. The Customs and Border Patrol has a program where you buy a decal that actually goes on your plane, and it's good for a year, and that provides ATC services for the year throughout the US. It's about $33, I think, for the year. I'll put the link to the website to buy the decal down in the description below. Now, if you go online and you pay for it and the decal hasn't arrived by the time you have to fly, no worries. You just take the receipt with you that shows that you paid, and it'll have the little decal number on it, and you can show that to the border officer when you land. Second step is picking your airport of entry. Similar to coming into Canada, the first airport that you land at has to be a port of entry, and you can go back to ForeFlight and look at that airport information page. And here you'll find one of 5 entries in that customs available field. It'll either be yes, PPR for prior permission required, no, unknown, or ADCIS, which is like advised customs. That's an older program where the traffic controllers would actually call the customs office at your destination airport to keep them updated on when you're going to be landing. It's not generally used much anymore. So I'm mostly going to focus on the yes and the prior permission required options because they're pretty much the same. No matter which one of those you pick, you've got to be calling the office before you actually fly. Once I've shortlisted a few airports that I might land at, I'll go to the Customs and Border Patrol website to look at their ports of entry page, and I'll search to see which airports actually have an office right on site. And it'll give you information about what hours they're open and the phone number to call, because you're going to use that in the next step as well. When you're choosing which airport to land at, you don't necessarily need to land at the first port of entry that you fly over after crossing the border. You could fly all the way to your destination, and I've done that before on the way to Raleigh. In general, I prefer to land pretty soon after I've flown across the border. It gives me a little bit of a break, I can refuel, and then the nice thing is, if I need to divert for any reason, or if I just feel like taking a break somewhere before I get to my destination, I don't need to worry about Customs and Border Patrol trying to chase me down. Step 3, and again, this step actually has 2 little parts to it. It's filing the eAPIS online, and it is calling the customs office at the airport where you're going to be landing to get some information with them and get your clearance to actually land. Flying into the US is a little bit different in terms of the timing. You have to file the eAPIS and call that agency office at least 2 hours and no more than 24 hours before you depart from the airport in Canada. So it's a little bit different in this direction versus coming north. They want you to call and get the approval to land at that airport before you even take off from Canada. So make sure you get that clearance before you take off. I found that every CBP office at different airports has a slightly different process they like to follow. Some of them want you to call a day in advance of the flight to get your permission. Some of them want you to call 2 hours in advance. Some of them want you to send them an email to get the confirmation of your permission to land. So what I like to do is a few days or even a couple of weeks before my planned flight, I'll call up the airports that I'm planning to land at, the Customs and Border Patrol offices, and I'll just find out what their process is so I am armed with that information when I need to do my actual filing and preparation the day before my flight. In the online eAPIS filing, you specify the Canadian airport that you're departing from, how many crew and passengers you have, what their citizenships are, where you're going to be landing in the US, what your ultimate destination is, where you're going to be staying. You have to give them that ATC sticker number, that decal number that you got when you paid the $33. And you need to tell them what time you're going to be landing at your arrival airport. You'll get a receipt number after you filed this online. I'll put a link to the website below, and you'll also get a confirmation email with that receipt number. Now that's separate from the phone call you have to make to the CBP office. They're actually going to want to know that receipt number before they'll give you permission to land at the airport. Fourth step, fly your flight. File that flight plan and fly your flight across the border. Again, you got to be either on VFR flight following or on an IFR flight plan, and you need to be crossing the border about 15 minutes, plus or minus 15 minutes of the time that you told them you're going to cross the border. And same with landing, which is the fifth step. So when you land at that airport of entry, you're going to taxi over to the designated spot that CBP has marked off. Usually it's a red square somewhere on the field, and when you call them, they'll tell you. But you taxi over to that box, you shut down your plane, and sometimes you have to call the local office to let them know you're there, but more often than not, they're monitoring traffic and they know you've arrived, and an agent will walk out, check out your passport, check your pilot's license, possibly your medical certificate, and then clear you on your way. There are some exceptions to this, so be sure to know the process that CBP wants you to follow. Like, for example, in Florida, instead of an agent coming out to your plane, they actually want you to take everything out of your plane, put it on a luggage cart, and cart it into the office in order to get clearance. So make sure when you call them, you know fully exactly what they want you to do after you land. So that's it. It may seem kind of daunting the first time you do it, and I know it can be intimidating when you're dealing with customs, but I promise you it's pretty straightforward. Just follow the steps, make sure you get the information from the websites to get the details, and just don't do anything stupid. Don't land where you're not supposed to, and don't radically change your flight times without calling the customs office where you got your clearance and letting them know of your new plans. So there's really no excuse to make that cross-border trip this summer if it's something you've been thinking about doing. There are plenty of wonderful destinations on both sides of the border that are worth checking out. Let me know in the comments where you think you're going to be going, and who knows, maybe I'll see you there. And if you want to see some more examples of my flights where I'm crossing the border, check out this series of videos about my trip to the Bahamas where I crossed the border 4 times in 4 different places. Thanks for watching as always. I'll see you in the next one, and in the meantime, fly safe.